my name is Tommy. I'm a mask and puppet maker. And in this video, I will be showing you how to make another mask. And that mask is Lefty the Bear from Five Nights at Freddy's 6. Welcome to Tommy's Puppet Lab. Enjoy the show. For this tutorial, you will need a head base. Click in the link in the description below to learn how to make a head base using just a balloon. Before we get started with this tutorial, I just want to cover some safety. Knives and scissors are very sharp and pointy, so please get an adult to help you. Always cut away from yourself, never towards yourself. And that includes your fingers. When using hot glue, always wear gloves to protect yourself from burns. Never touch the tip, and I highly recommend adult supervision. Alright, let's start. The first thing we should do is to make the muzzle. So I'm going to set this aside. To make the muzzle, we will be crumbling newspaper into the shape of a peanut. And you should have something that looks like this. Okay, so here's the muzzle. So I'm just going to put it onto the head. Yes, that will work. That should work. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to make the nose. So we're going to scrunch newspaper into a very small ball. So the nose should look something like this. Might want to make it a little flatter. And then we're going to put it right here. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to glue this on here. Okay, and the muzzle should look like this. So there's the nose, and that's the muzzle. And for the cheeks, he has red cheeks, or blush, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to be using a styrofoam ball. So what I'm going to do is I am going to cut it right in half. Just be careful when you're doing this, okay? Might want to get an adult to do this for you. You should have something that looks like this. You can use newspaper if you want, but I'm going to be using this because this will look nicer. Now the next thing I'm going to make are the ears. So let's make the ears right now. So now we are going to be making the ears. So you'll need something round to trace over and a permanent marker like I have right here. So you take something round, I'm using this masking tape here, and you want to trace around it. You're going to make two circles. And you should have something that looks like that. We're going to cut them out. Okay, so in order to attach them to the head, we will need to cut out two rectangles, two small rectangles. I'm going to attach these to the circles right here. I'm going to use hot glue. And you should have something that looks like this. Okay, I'm going to set it aside for the glue to cool off. The next thing that we will need are the eyebrows. So we're going to draw the eyebrows. You should have something that looks like that. I'm going to cut it out and I'm going to trace over it and then cut that one out. Then we will have two identical eyebrows. And there you go. You have yourself a set of eyebrows. Okay, the next thing I'm going to make is the top hat. I'm going to grab something round and a roll of masking tape will work perfectly for this job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace around the outside and then I'm going to trace around the inside. You'll see why in a moment. Then I'm going to make another circle. Okay, so you should have two circles like that. We're going to cut them out. And I'm going to cut out the inside here. Okay, so now you should have a small ring like that. So it should look like a slice of pineapple. And now, for the other circle, we're going to cut this. Alright, so now you have a ring and a smaller circle. This is going to be the top of the hat. Okay, so now we just need to make the rest of the hat. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a rectangular piece of cardboard and we will roll it. So, right about there is good. Use a ruler to keep the line straight. We're going to cut that off. And you should have something that looks like this. Now we're going to roll it. Roll it with the direction of the grain. Don't roll it this way, because it won't look very nice and it doesn't roll very well. And just like that, just let it go and there you go. All you need to do now, that's your top hat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape this together and I'm going to glue everything together. Like I said, you can use masking tape if you don't want to use hot glue. That's perfectly fine. Got this all taped together. I'm going to glue this onto the bottom here. I'm going to use masking tape to put the top on. Now you have yourself a very nice looking top hat. You can make it shorter, you can make it taller, it's up to you. Alright, so now we have our head base here, so let's start gluing things on. Okay, so here is the muzzle. I'm going to glue this at the bottom of the mask. Needs to have some wider cheeks. You're going to scrunch up some newspaper like this, and we're just going to attach it to the side.
Do the same thing to the other side.
Okay, so now that is done. So yeah, this is where we're going to be gluing these on. So now we need to cut out the eyes. So let's do that. Okay, so we're going to draw out the eyes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to flip this over and I'm going to trace around it and cut it out so both eye holes are exactly identical. Alright, we don't need these. So yeah, I'm going to have to fix that because I cut just a little bit too deep there, but that's not a big deal. So we're going to glue the eyebrow just above the eye holes, okay? Alright, and then at the top of the mask, I just want to press it down, just kind of make it flatter. The top hat's going to cover this up, so you're not going to notice it, but yeah, that way it just fits on a little better. Looking good. So now we need to add the eyelids. This character has eyelids. Hey, I'm going to put some styrofoam balls right here. I'm just kind of going to use them as a guide. I'm just stuffing some newspaper on the bottom and putting a ball on the top. Take a very tiny strip of newspaper and just wrap it around this eye right here, like that. I made it just a little bit too long, so just rip off any extra newspaper. Now I'm going to glue this on, but you can definitely use masking tape if you want. Just like that. This will be an eyelid once we remove this styrofoam here. but we're gonna do it after the paper mache part. So we're just gonna leave this as it is. Now lastly, we need to make the bottom jaw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of cardboard here. Or you can just make it all entirely out of newspaper. You don't have to use cardboard if you don't have this much. I'm just going to trace around half of this at the bottom of the mask. And you should have something that looks like that. Okay, then you should have something that looks like this. This will be the bottom jaw. Cut this out. So, once you have this cut out, this is going to be the bottom jaw. Now we just need to add some depth to it. So I'm going to take some newspaper. I'm going to scrunch it on top and just take the shape of the cardboard cutout. So I'm actually using this as a stencil. Okay, and you should have something that looks like this. So notice how wrapping the masking tape around the newspaper, and the newspaper just takes the shape of the cardboard stencil. So yeah, it is a lot easier to use cardboard. Like I say, you can make it all newspaper if you don't have any cardboard. Okay, now we just need to detail the top here. So I'm actually just going to add a little bit of newspaper around the edges here. Okay, and there's your bottom jaw. We'll add the teeth on. We still need to shape this just a little bit right here, but that's going to be easier when it's covered in paper mache and it's dry. So let's move on to the paper mache part, shall we? Okay, so now it is time to add the paper mache. So you will need a brush, a container, white glue, and you'll need some water. So you just mix 1 part white glue and 1 part water. I'm going to show you how to mix parts. So if you're using 1 cup of water, you're going to add 1 cup of glue. 2 cups of water, 2 cups of glue. That's what that means. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the water first. So I have 1 cup of water here. 1 cup of glue. This is white glue. So this is 1 part white glue. I'm going to pour that in. You mix your solution. So you're going to grab your project, and then you'll need some tissue paper. I use toilet paper because it's cheap and it works really well. Alright, so with your paintbrush, you want to brush on the surface area. This is so that the tissue paper can stick on well. You take 1 layer of tissue paper and you put it over the wet surface area. Then you're going to brush more glue on top of it. Make sure it is completely soaked. And once that's done, we're going to put another layer on top. And brush more glue on top. You're going to repeat this process until you have 3 or 4 layers and cover up all cardboard and newspaper. So let's get busy. For this part, I'm just going to cover up the newspaper strips. Don't touch the styrofoam. I'm using a smaller brush, as you can see. Now, I'm just going to detail the ears a little bit before I cover it up. So, you want to just brush some glue around the ends of the circles here, like this. Now, I'm going to take some tissue, just kind of roll the tissue up here, and I'm just going to wrap it around the ear like that. This will make the ears look more realistic. And when you're happy with how it looks, just cover it up in paper mache. And there you go. That's it. So do the same thing to the other ear. Okay, so here's everything in paper mache. So it should be nice and hard now. I made the hat just a little bit shorter. I thought it was just a little bit too tall. So here's the hat. So at this point I'm actually just going to do some smoothing. Now for these eyes, it is now okay to take these styrofoam balls out. And there you go. Those are the eyelids. And these are the eyelids. And they're nice and hard. So the next thing we need to do is we need to detail the muzzle a little bit more. And we need to add the we need to add the cheeks. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to cut a styrofoam ball in half. Just be careful when you're cutting it in half. It's being a little bit tricky. So now I'm going to use hot glue and I'm going to glue this on. So when you're gluing styrofoam, just glue the surface area and let it cool down for about 10 seconds. And then we are going to put this on. If you put it on when it's too hot, then it'll just melt. That should be good enough. Do the same thing to here. And then I'm going to cover this up in paper mache. But first, I'm going to take your knife. So you're going to take your knife, and then you're going to cut a line just in the middle at the nose here. Like that, and then you're going to push it in like this. Okay, that's all there is to it. So now we're just going to cover these in paper mache, and I'm going to cover that. And that's what it should look like. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is we need to start adding the teeth. So we will need to cut out some cardboard squares. Okay, so we're going to need to cut out some cardboard squares. You're going to want to cut out 12. So I'm going to be making 12 squares. And there you go. You should have 12 squares. So we're going to put 8 squares on the bottom and we're going to put 4 squares on the top. So 8 is going to go on here, and at the bottom of the muzzle we're going to put on 4. And I'm going to use hot glue for that. So just remember to be careful when you're using hot glue. And this is what you should have when you're done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this in paper mache so that it stays on better. Now let's attach the ears. So we're going to cut an opening on the top of the head, just on the side here. And now, you see this opening that we just cut? We're going to put this into that opening. Just like that. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I'm just going to use hot glue just to secure that. There he is. Lefty is now ready to be painted. Alright everybody, it's time to start painting. So the colors we are going to need, we will need black and white. Now Lefty, I'm going to make him a very dark gray. So that's what I'm going to do instead of making him completely black. And then we're also going to need some red. Okay, and that's about all we're going to need for colors. Very easy character to make, so let's start. Kind of fixed up the teeth because I thought they were just a little bit too wide, but yeah, it looks all right now. Make sure you paint the inside red. I missed that as well, so good thing I double checked, right? Now the last thing we need to do before we start working on the movable jaw, we need to glue the hat on. Okay, so he's got one eye right here, which would be his right eye, and I have added some see-through fabric. I didn't add any fabric on this side because you want to be able to see out of this mask. So we're going to make the moving jaw, and to do that, you're going to need some stretchy fabric. Okay, I got this at the dollar store, so this is very cheap. Okay, and then we are also going to need some cardboard. I'm going to cut 4 strips like that. Alright, so now I'm going to show you what you need to do next. So, okay, so you have your bottom jaw right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue on a piece of cardboard right here. We can paint this later. So I'm just going to attach that. Okay, so I glued on this cardboard. This is going to support your chin. Now I'm just going to lay this out like that, and I'm going to glue this band onto this piece of cardboard. And now we're going to glue on another piece of cardboard on top, kind of like a sandwich, but you cannot eat this sandwich, okay? I highly advise that you do not eat this sandwich. Okay, I'm just going to put this weight on top, just let it cool down, and we will do the fitting next. Alright, so now it is time to fit on the jaw. So you're going to take your bottom jaw, and you want to take these 2 straps and just wrap it around your head. And what's going to happen is when you move your chin, now you don't want it to be too tight, because you want to be able to breathe, okay? And it needs to be comfortable. Comfort is very important. It's key. So that works just about right here. Okay, just remember, this needs to be comfortable. Don't make it tight. Okay, you need to be able to breathe. So I'm going to glue these 2 together. Okay, so once that's glued together, I'm going to take this piece of cardboard and I'm going to glue this onto the cardboard like here. So the same thing that we did at the bottom here. So I'm going to glue this on top like a sandwich. Again, please don't eat this sandwich. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to use this mask. You're going to take your bottom jaw and you're going to put it on first. Put on the bottom jaw first. Perfect. So just make sure it's nice and secure. This is why you don't want it to be too tight. If you make it too tight and it slips off, it's going to snap on your face and then, well, it's going to hurt. Alright, so now that you have your bottom jaw on, Put on your mask and watch the magic. And just like that. Now when you're taking this off, just be careful. You don't want it to snap on your face, so use both hands. It comes off just fine. And that is how you make Lefty. And there you have it. You now know how to make Lefty the bear. I hope you enjoyed that video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.